In the history of Major League Baseball, America's national pastime, a number of players have been despised by fans over the years for varying reasons. Among some of the most hated players is Jennifer Lopez's ex-fiancé Alex Rodriguez. So stay tuned and don't go away because we're about to reveal A-Rod's highlights and why he's so hated. So let's get started. First up, why was A-Rod so hated during his career? You're about to find out. Unfortunately for Alex Rodriguez, fans had plenty of reasons for disliking him, so it isn't possible to narrow it down to one single solitary reason. A-Rod is also a strange and socially awkward kind of guy, and that never really sat well with his fans. He was also caught using performance-enhancing drugs, which are seriously frowned upon in the game of baseball, and he was vilified by fans across America and around the world for having done so. Another reason fans despised him was because he was one of the highest-paid baseball players in the history of the game, and many fans were left scratching their heads wondering why. According to many fans, his salary simply didn't match up with his value as a player. In an apologetic statement to his fans, A-Rod once wrote, "I accept the fact many of you will not believe my apology or anything that I say at this point. I understand why, and that's on me." A-Rod signed a $252 million contract, which many fans have said he's not tough enough mentally or physically to deserve. There have been complaints about his swinging style and the fact he openly admits to seeing a psychiatrist. Not to mention, A-Rod has been known to peruse various art galleries for macho alpha male baseball fans. All of these things are clear signs of weakness. Next up, how has Alex Rodriguez managed to stand strong in the midst of so much hate? Let's take a look. When A-Rod was accepted to the American League All-Star team, he was once asked by reporters whether or not he was surprised to have been voted to start on the team after all of the relentless booing he received. A-Rod simply replied, "The whole world is not New York. There are some people out there who like me." After a frustrating series with Boston, A-Rod spoke about wanting to be accepted and said, "We can win 3 World Series, and with me, it's never going to be over. My benchmark is so high that no matter what I do, it's never going to be enough." Yankees manager Joe Torre chimed in as well, saying it hurts him. He's a sensitive guy. And this goes back to our original problem of A-Rod appearing to be far too sensitive for rowdy baseball fans, particularly New Yorkers, who have a reputation of being some of the toughest baseball fans around. In other words, fans don't want sensitive Major League Baseball players, and in a sense, that's always been A-Rod's problem. He's far too sensitive, feels too much, and lets things get to him. And at the end of his career, it was clear the weight of the world was starting to affect A-Rod's playing ability. His strikeouts became more frequent, and in some games, he was striking out as much as 4 times per game. Clearly, such lousy performances would anger fans who knew full well he'd signed a contract worth $250 million. Up next, did A-Rod try to change his ultra-sensitive image by acting hard? Let's have a look. In an interview with members of the New York media, A-Rod once admitted that boos from fans were essentially hurting his feelings. And while I can empathize with A-Rod here, the last thing you want to do if you're a Major League Baseball player is admit boos from fans are bothering you. He might as well have worn a t-shirt on the field that says, "I have thin skin." If you're that sensitive, American baseball fans will eat you alive. So A-Rod tried to change this sensitive image by acting hard, and in the end only came across as fake and out of sorts. During spring training in one of his final seasons, Rodriguez began dropping F-bombs and cussing more in conversations and interviews. Peter Abraham of the Journal News in suburban New York explained, "It was out of nowhere. It sounded weird, like it wasn't even him." A-Rod comes off as this strange blend of superstar talent and confidence, but with the uncertainty and instability of an average Joe. And this hasn't always been A-Rod's problem, and hard-nosed baseball fans have been either unwilling or unable to empathize with someone who's so rich. One thing we can't deny is that in his prime, A-Rod was a tremendously talented player in Major League Baseball. Stay tuned and don't go away because we're about to reveal some of the most hated pro baseball players of all time. Next up, who are some of the most hated MLB players of all time? You're about to find out. A-Rod certainly wasn't the only player in the MLB's history that unforgiving baseball fans had a problem with. One of the most hated baseball players ever was Cap Anson. Why? Because he was proudly racist. He never liked people of a different race and made it known through his actions towards them. On several occasions, Anson was set to play against a club that employed African American players, and he always refused to play. At times, he'd be forced to play, but he'd make his opinions known. He was clearly against it. He may have been a great player, but it's a shame he wasn't a better human being. Anson even played an active role in excluding African American players from getting contracts because he refused to play against them. Clearly, Anson had an influence on the way baseball was conducted more than a century ago. Another hated player was John McGraw. Baseball was created to be a fair game that many could play. It wasn't created so that players could find loopholes and exploit those loopholes to obtain success. John McGraw was infamous for being one of those players. Back in the day, there was only one umpire on the field, and McGraw knew just how to take advantage of what the umpire couldn't see. He would take cheap shots at players in the field so that they would commit an error, and in today's day and age, could you imagine someone doing this? Up next, who is one of the most hated Red Sox players ever? Let's find out. Pedro Martinez got into a scuffle with the New York Yankees during the 2003 ALCS after hitting Kareem Garcia with a pitch, and Yankees catcher Jorge Posada took offense to it and a fight ensued. Everyone was on the field, and Don Zimmer, an assistant coach at the time for the Yankees, ran towards Martinez. Not sure of what Zimmer was going to do, Martinez tossed him to the ground. Zimmer was an older gentleman, and Martinez's actions understandably angered fans. Late in the 2004 season, Martinez made some comments about how the Yankees were his daddy since he had trouble taking down the evil empire before, and Yankee fans produced the loudest and clearest Yankee Stadium chants you'll ever hear directed at Martinez, shouting, "Who's your daddy?" To this day, the Yankees and the Boston Red Sox have one of the fiercest rivalries in Major League Baseball, and it's a beef that's showing no signs of slowing down. Another hated player is Manny Ramirez. Ramirez is essentially a bad apple, and many consider his actions to be ridiculous and insulting to the game's image. When he was with the Red Sox, he frequently failed to hustle on ground balls and plays in the outfield. He was suspended by Major League Baseball for testing positive for performance-enhancing drugs and decided to retire instead. Ramirez was also arrested for domestic battery after allegedly hitting his wife. Finally, who are two of the most hated baseball players of all time? If there's absolutely one thing that baseball players should never do, it's cheat. Performance-enhancing drugs, or PEDs, are a terrible part of the game. However, gambling is an even bigger issue. Pete Rose learned this the hard way. He was banned from baseball for life after he was caught gambling on games. Rose was the all-time hits leader, and he'll never be in the Hall of Fame unless he's pardoned for his misdeeds. According to MLB rules, quote, "Any umpire or club or league official or employee who shall bet any sum whatsoever upon baseball games in connection with which the bettor has a duty to perform shall be declared permanently ineligible." Moving on now to the most hated Major League player of all time, Ty Cobb. Cobb is the worst human being to ever play the game. He was frequently involved in fights and was a proud racist. Cobb once had a confrontation with a groundskeeper back in 1907 during spring training, and as historian Gilbert King explained, in Augusta, Georgia, a black groundskeeper named Bungie, who Cobb had known for years, attempted to shake Cobb's hand or pat him on the shoulder. The overly familiar greeting infuriated Cobb, who slapped him and chased him from the clubhouse. When Bungie's wife tried to intervene, Cobb turned around and choked her until teammates pried his hands off her neck. Cobb even jumped into the stands and beat a fan who was heckling the team. Well, that's a wrap for today's video. Thanks for watching.